Thematically, Deathknights are the minions of Arthas, the Lich King. So their entire skill set is kind of a watered down version of what is expected of that character to be able to do. So we're going to be using some frost magic, doing some death and decay, spreading disease, and siphoning life from our opponents. All of that with a big two-handed weapon. So what do they do best? Deathknights are the #1 tank at handling magical damage, with effects like Anti-Magic Zone and Anti-Magic Shell, as well as easy ability to move around and disrupt magical opponents. Deathknights are just fantastic at handling those casters. They're also extremely good at generating threat from a long distance, with several spells such as Death and Decay, Death Coil, as well as of course the ability to grip your opponents into you. Pulling ranged opponents into melee range is of course a very good way to shut down the large threat that they tend to pose in dungeons and raids. Deathknights forgo having a shield and blocking damage effects in favor of instead healing back damage received. So although they are a very spiky tank compared to other tanks out there, they're also able to self-sustain better than any other tank. So as you are being healed by your allies, you're going to be spending quite a bit of time healing yourself, and you'll almost end up being close to a 4th healer. The amount of extra damage Deathknights take compared to other tanks is not as significant as the amount of healing that they produce, so it really does make a huge difference to a raid group. Deathknights have a lot of mitigation abilities as well as a cheat death system baked into their class, which allows them to be effective tanks in very stressful scenarios. They're one of the few tanks that can usually just face tank almost anything a Mythic Plus can throw at you, as well as they're a tank that you can leave to a high threat boss and just rely on the fact that they're going to be able to make it. So what makes playing a Death Knight fun? Well, it's really about how much control you have over the battlefield. There isn't much more satisfying than the fact that you can make sure players and enemy NPCs are where they don't want to be, by being able to grip them in with like Abomination Limb, Death Grip, Gorfiend's Grasp, locking them down with Chains of Ice. Just ability to stop them from leaving and getting away from you is just so rewarding. Nothing feels better than seeing an enemy teleport away only for you to Death Grip them back into your big axe as you smash into them with another Heart Strike. Anti-Magic Zone and Anti-Magic Shell are also very rewarding abilities. When you see those magical effects come out and you're just like, nope, they're not going to affect us right now. It just feels really good. Finally, just not dying. There is so many times in my raid group where everybody was dead and I was still just tanking and tanking and tanking because my character just would not die. With stacked effects like Purgatory, the amount of healing you can get from Death Strike, and then all those cooldowns that you have to be able to rely on, you just don't go down, and that just feels awesome as a tank. What you're going to struggle with when you play this class is movement. Really, they are the least mobile of the tanks, with only Death's Advance really as a way to move around unless you talent into Wraithwalk, and even then, it's not really that great of a movement ability. So with a very limited amount of movement increasing effects and no way to quickly move from one place to another, you're definitely going to struggle on those fights that need you to go from here to there rather quickly. To make up for that, their speed cannot be reduced below 70%. So some effects in raids will often slow units down, and it does not really affect the Death Knight. Playing as a Death Knight, you're going to have a dual unique resource system. So they run off of 2 unique resources. One of those resources is runes, and the other resource is runic power. Most of your rune spending abilities will generate runic power, and then your runic power abilities will be kind of core to your class. So as a tanking Death Knight, your main runic power generator is going to be Heart Strike and Marrow Rend, where your runic power spender is going to be Death Strike. You're going to want to use Death Strike to heal back damage that you've received, and you're going to want to plan it around spikes. So you don't want to be Death Striking if you're already at full health, and you might want to use something else, or you might want to pool up that runic power until that spike hits, and then you can heal yourself up, relieving stress from the healers. Rotation-wise, the Death Knight plays around keeping up your stacks of Bone Shield. So that's going to be using the Marrow Rend ability, which costs 2 of your runes to generate 3 charges of Bone Shields. You lose charges of Bone Shields over time, and as you are hit, and you need to continually be using Marrow Rend to get those stacks back up. You don't want to have less than 5 stacks of Bone Shield on you at the given time. As long as you're at 5 or more than 5, you're going to then want to be making sure that you keep your Blood Plague out. So that's going to be from Blood Boil or from Death's Caress. Then any remaining runes that you have should go into using Heart Strike. I would recommend keeping 2 runes active at all times so that you can use a Marrow Rend when you need it, and not to spend those last 2 runes on Heart Strikes. Death Strike will come into play to heal yourself, as I said earlier. You'll use it to react to bursts of damage. You can also use a runic power to shoot out death coils for long-range threat if that is more important at the moment than healing yourself. Alternatively, Death Coil also heals undead units. If you use the skill Lichborn, you become undead yourself, and you're able to target yourself and heal yourself using Death Coils. As Death Strike only heals you based off of damage you've recently taken within the last 5 seconds, this can be a useful way to heal yourself if you took a burst at a moment that no healing could go out, and you need to recover later on, especially when you're not receiving any damage. A advanced trick to Deathknights is making sure to use Anti-Magic Shell to generate runic power. A lot of boss fights have residual magic damage happening, and you can use Anti-Magic Shell to both reduce that extra damage that's going out, as well as generate yourself some runic power. If there's no major effect on the boss that needs you to have that 1-minute cooldown of magical damage prevention, you really want to use it to maximize your runic power generation. Deathknights are one of the few classes that can battle res, so they do have the ability to raise a dead ally mid-combat, which is very clutch for raids. In AoE scenarios, really the only change is that you're going to start dropping Death and Decay more often, and you're going to start using Blood Boil on cooldown. Now really, because of talents, Death and Decay will probably be down anyways because of your increased damage while you're in it, if you take that talent. And it's pretty good to just use Blood Boil when you don't have any runic power and you don't have any runes you want to spend. So really, there isn't that much of a difference between your AoE and your single target rotation. Let's wrap this up with a quick chat about talents. Really, I think this is one of the most disappointed talent trees for me. I don't see any option other than Abomination Limb over on the Deathknight side. Empowered Rune Weapon might be better for DPS, but really it wasn't that exciting as a tank, and then Soul Reaper is just terrible, I think, in most scenarios. I don't really get the point of it. So there was really a letdown there, and then throughout the tree, there's must-haves, Anti-Magic Zone, you need to get Icebound Fortitude, you need to get Raised Ally, or Raised Dead, and other AoE enhancing effects. So there was a lot of feeling of, I have to get these talents, and not a lot of, ooh, I want that and this, and I can't have both. So that was a little bit of a disappointment on the Deathknight side. Over on the Blood side, again, in the bottom of it, Purgatory was really the only option that I wanted badly. I like Bone Storm, I think it's really cool. It just didn't really excite me enough to get it, and I wouldn't give up Purgatory to get Bone Storm. Bloodshot was just meh, and then Umbulicious Eternus. I could see it being okay in big AoE scenarios where you need a lot of shielding from that, but again, I just wasn't excited. Talents in here were a little bit better. Dancing Rune Weapon was pretty cool. Getting Ossuary is like mandatory. There was a couple more options throughout this, but again, I didn't really feel like, oh, I need to get this. So I'm going to share this tree. I think this is the best tree to be able to use with it, and you can play around with that. Feel free to tweak things. This is just my personal opinion. So if absolute control over the battlefield is appealing to you, and you like the idea of raising the dead, siphoning life from your opponents, and spreading death and decay across the battlefield, and just never dying is appealing to you, then maybe the Deathknight class is the tank class that is going to be best for you in WoW Dragonflight. I hope this guide helped you making your decision on what kind of tank you're going to play.